Hi folks, this is going to be a movie review. A movie review with spoilers. So if this is a movie you want to see, maybe don't watch the video. Anyway, the movie is called God's Not Dead. And I only found out about it because I heard about a sequel, God's Not Dead 2, released this year. So I decided to watch the first movie on Friday evening, just for fun, just to see what they were going to say about the atheist position. And the movie was complete train wreck. Okay, let's talk about it. The story is basically about this young guy going to college, and he has to take a philosophy class, and the philosophy teacher is an atheist professor. He's played by the actor who, I forget his name, but he played Hercules in the series Hercules. So he's an atheist college professor, and in the first lesson he makes this maverick move of suggesting to his class that they skip the whole God question and move on to things more interesting. But in order to skip that issue, he wants everyone in the class to take a piece of paper and write the words "God is dead" and sign it with their name and hand it in to him. As if that would happen in reality, as if that would happen. So anyway, everybody starts scribbling God is dead, except our hero, the protagonist, who is a Christian. And he has some integrity, so he can't bring himself to do it. But he's the only one in the entire classroom of 80 students who does this. Like, you put 80 people together in a room, 80 random people in their late teens, and you're only going to find one Christian. I don't think so. So clearly, right from the get-go, we're dealing with a film that is just not dealing with reality. And so what does the college professor do at this point? He then tries to coerce the student into writing God is dead. He knows perfectly well at this point that this is a Christian he's dealing with. So instead of just accepting it and saying, okay, I don't want you to compromise your principles, which is what an ethical person would do, he tries to coerce the boy. Because that's what atheists do, apparently. He says to the student, you're going to then have to prove that God exists. So over the next 3 classes, I'm going to give you 20 minutes at the end of the class to talk to everybody in the class and to state your case about why you believe that God is real. As if this would actually happen. And he's threatening sort of dire consequences for the guy's grades if he fails. What kind of a world are we living in here? So anyway, the thing begins, and the guy starts stating his case for God, and there are various arguments put forward. The one that I recall most of all was the guy tried to make the argument that if you don't believe in God, you can't have moral absolutes, which is true, really. But then he goes on to assume that if you can't have moral absolutes, that every value is of equal value to every other value. For instance, making love to a woman is no better or worse than raping a woman because you don't have moral absolutes. When any sane person knows that's not the case, because we are human beings that have an inbuilt nature of empathy towards others of our own kind. So, it comes naturally because there are consequences I don't want. we would not rape a woman. And I don't even mean consequences for the rapist. I just mean consequences for the woman, because we all have feelings for each other, you know? So just because we don't have moral absolutes, it doesn't completely make every value equal to every other value. That's absurd. But we hear this argument time and time again from the Christian camp. But where it gets interesting is a little bit of the professor's background comes out, and I can't remember the exact details, but it was something to do with a member of his family, his mother or his grandmother or something, who died. I can't remember if it was cancer or something else, but it revealed that the professor has antagonism or hatred towards God. So the big question, and the student is getting very forceful at this point, he's really building towards his end game, and he says, why do you hate God, Professor? Come on, it's a simple question. Why do you hate God? And eventually the professor just blurts out why he hates God. And the kid goes, well, how can you hate God if you don't believe in him? Oh, slam dunk. You know, it's like the people who made this video think that all atheists secretly do believe in God but hate him, and they pretend not to believe because they hate him and they want to cause other people to lose their faith. I hate to break it to you, Christians who think this way, but that would just never happen to someone like me. I had a mother who died of cancer, and I watched her basically turn into a skeleton, a living skeleton over a period of 1 year as this disease ate her alive. No part of me blames an imaginary God for that happening. At the time, I actually believed in Christianity, and it didn't cause me to lose my faith or anything like that. I was just prepared to accept the old cliche that God has a plan for our lives, and it's not supposed to be heaven on earth. Horrible things do happen here. I just accepted those things. But certainly, that wasn't any kind of a motivating factor that led me to disbelieve. I disbelieve in Christianity because the claims of Christianity do not reflect reality. And I could talk at length on that. I don't hate God. I don't have any anger issues towards a God that I don't believe in. And that's the standard atheist position. This character in this movie is not representative of non-believers, not remotely. But I guess some Christians just want to believe that atheists are secretly believers who hate God. So another misstep on the professor's part was he started quoting Stephen Hawking, and it was some kind of quote along the lines of, when there is a law like gravity, a universe can and will create itself out of nothing. And he held this up as a kind of authority, and he said to the student, Stephen Hawking is like the greatest mind on the planet. Are you going to say that you know more than him? That's not the way to defend non-belief, to defend atheism. You don't hold people up as, especially complicated pieces of physics that someone like me can't even understand. I'm not going to quote that as if that's some kind of argument, because I don't understand it. And I do believe that even somebody like Stephen Hawking is capable of error. In fact, one of the things that he said in his book, The Grand Design, was philosophy is dead. And this actually came up in the movie, where the the student said, you're going to quote Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking said philosophy is dead, and this is a philosophy class. So where does that leave you, Professor? See, that's not even an argument against the professor's position, but it's put forward as if it is. Because Stephen Hawking is not an authority. You have to make an actual argument, which this movie does not do. It just wants to portray the atheist professor as a thoroughly reprehensible human being who can't debate, who likes to coerce people, and so on, and who secretly hates God. The movie also has some subplots, one of which is a Muslim girl who is a student at the same college. Her dad leaves her off in the morning. She's got the veil across her face, and whenever her dad drives off, she takes the veil off, and then when he picks her up in the afternoon again, she puts it back on for his benefit. And she's secretly a Christian, and her dad finds out about this through an audiobook of the Bible on her iPod. So she's kicked out of her home. He kicks her out of the home. And I guess this is supposed to portray how Christians are persecuted. But the same thing would happen if the daughter had just said, "Hey Dad, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in Allah. I'm an atheist. Get out." It's got nothing really to do with Christianity. It just shows how, if anything, it shows how monotheism and the belief in religious authority can make people do these crazy things against people that they love. Because we know perfectly well that there are examples of Christian families that throw people out of their families. That happened to somebody in Westboro Baptist Church. I remember hearing about that. And I was ostracized from some people, not my family, but I was ostracized from the lives of some of my friends because I didn't have the same metaphysical views as they did. So, another subplot involved this boyfriend of this woman. The boyfriend was actually played by the actor who plays Clark Kent in the old series Lois and Clark. Yeah, I forget his name too. So it's not a movie with nobodies in it. They've got some actors here of some notoriety. So his girlfriend says, "I've got cancer," and they're having a nice dinner in a restaurant, and he says, "Couldn't this have waited until tomorrow?" What kind of a human being says that? Tell me you've got cancer tomorrow, not while we're having a nice meal in a restaurant. And he dumps her on the spot. He says, you and me, we both got something out of this relationship. I think it's time, to call it a day. And he just walks out of her life in the middle of the meal. Later in the movie, he's visiting his mother, who is in a home because she has Alzheimer's or something, and she's not quite herself. And he's just talking to the woman in the room, and she's not giving any indication that she knows who he is or that she's even hearing him. When she suddenly turns around to him, he says to her, "How come I'm so successful and you're like this? When, I have everything in life I could possibly want, but I'm not a good person. And here you are, you've lived all your life, you've been good, and here you are, your brain doesn't even work, you're stuck in a home. Why does that happen?" And she turns around to him, and she gives a whole speech about how sometimes the devil makes our life very comfortable in order to keep us away from God. That's a nice made up story, And I was kind of waiting for the point where they would use a little bit of the fear mongering that tends to come up in Christianity, and it didn't disappoint. There was nothing as crude as "you're going to hell if you don't believe," but it was kind of in there, you know. So the girl with the cancer, she ends up towards the end of the movie interviewing this Christian rock band, and they're sitting there, you know, and they decide to pray with her, and it's the usual nonsense about God has a plan for your life. And all I could think about was my mom. The idea that her suffering was part of God's plan. It's just nuts. Cancer is a horrible thing, and there's no good comes from it. I don't believe there's no good comes from it. Yes, I know that suffering in life can sometimes be a character building experience, but I would never wish cancer on anybody after seeing what my mum went through. I've heard, I haven't seen the second movie yet, but I've heard that she's in it and she's all lovely and cancer free, which is very convenient. But I'll reserve judgment on that until I've seen it. The real point at which this movie makes a total nosedive and becomes utterly farcical, if it's not that already, is towards the end, where the professor is out on the street. He's wanting to go somewhere, and it starts raining. And all I can think is, it starts raining on him heavily, and all I think is, here we go. God's pissing on him now because of who he is. And then he crosses the road at the wrong moment, and a car slams into him, knocks him flying, and he's lying there in the rain, really badly injured. And a couple of Christian guys who were in the movie earlier get out of their car and they come over. And he's lying there and he's dying. He's not going to live. He's dying. And they say, you've been given a real opportunity here to give your life to Jesus before you die. Not everybody gets this chance. Do you want to, it's like the thief on the cross, you know. Do you want to give your life to Jesus? And he does at the last minute. It's like, it's like the makers of this movie, they have to humiliate this guy as much as possible. It's the ultimate humiliation, where not only have they revealed that you're secretly a atheist who hates God, we're now going to bring you to your knees, and you're gonna recant everything that you've stood for in life, all the beliefs that you've stood for. We're going to undo all that now because you're right at the door of death, and you've got to be afraid of that. It's a chance to get right with God. No atheists in foxholes. Isn't that the old cliche? That when we're all up against the door, up against the wall, you know, when we're at death's door, that we'd all change our minds. That is not going to happen to me. There is not a single part of me that even remotely thinks that Christianity is true. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. When my mum was dying of cancer, one of the nurses asked her, did she want to see a minister? This is when she was hospitalized. And she said no. She didn't profess to be a believer during her life. And when my dad had a road traffic accident that ended in his death, he didn't get a chance to repent. And I know he wasn't a believer. It was just lights out. So Christianity for me means believing that this God is torturing my mum and dad right now for all eternity. Sorry, I just don't believe that. It's not that I refuse to believe it because it makes me angry. It just doesn't register as true remotely. And I couldn't believe that they had the atheist struck down. You know, in this day and age, when we know that bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people, they actually went as far as having the atheist struck down. We know that God is sovereign, right? According to Christianity. And the atheist is struck down by God using a car. And not only that, but he's rained on first. He's pissed on. And if that wasn't the intention, did nobody actually sit down before this movie was made, when they just had a script? Did nobody actually sit down and think, you know, how's this actually going to be perceived by atheists who are watching this? They're going to just see a vengeful God who is not only satisfied with striking someone dead, but has to actually annoy them first by raining on them before he strikes them dead. Is that really how you want to portray God in a movie? My jaw literally dropped when it happened in the movie. I couldn't believe what I was watching. It's funny how the themes of cancer and road traffic accident both turned up in this movie, and they both apply to my life. It's a sign. It's a sign from God. So at the end of the movie, we're all supposed to get our mobile phones out and text "God's not dead" to our friends. Sorry, folks. He is dead. Certainly the God of the Bible is dead. The God of monotheism is dead. God is not a person. I'm in touch with the idea that behind everything I see is an unfathomable mystery that is the source of, not just of the universe, but the source of my own being. So I am intimately connected to that. I don't need to give it a name. I don't need to give it a personality. I don't need to think of it as some kind of best buddy or father or judge or king or any of those man-made concepts that apply to us. I don't put those attributes onto God because I know they're only for us. I let God be what he, she, it is, which is a mystery. Most atheists, and I don't really call myself an atheist, most atheists are not comfortable with using the word God in any fashion, but I think it's a good enough word if you want to use it in a more abstract sense, because I don't believe that this is just a clockwork universe that has nothing behind it. But I do not expect to find Yahweh behind this, not by a long stretch. In closing, I just want to add one final note about what I think the purpose of this movie is. I don't think it's designed in any way to convert atheists to Christianity. It doesn't really make a proper argument against atheism. It's really more designed for Christians to reinforce what they already believe, particularly Christians who don't think too deeply about anything, who just kind of accept what they're told without question. And although I've kind of poked fun at it, yeah, well, there's no doubt I have poked fun at it, you know, I think any Christians watching this, any intelligent ones, should look at a movie like this and realize that it actually doesn't do you any favors. It doesn't present Christianity in a good light. No atheist who watches this is going to say, that was interesting, I felt challenged by that, it made me reconsider some of the things that I believe in. It could have been a movie like that, but it just didn't aim that high.